Good morning, third grade. Today our lesson is a problem solving lesson. So we are going to see a lot of problems with elapsed time, like the ones that we've been working with, but we're also going to see some other problems where we might need to think about which operation to use. They might have to do with time, but they might not. This is all about problem solving. We are doing pages 587 to 588, starting with number 3. Here we go. There are a couple ways that we could have done number 3. We could have used a Judy clock or the clock that we have saved on our iPad, or we could have done a number line. That's what I'm going to use today. When I use my number line, I get the answer of 3:12 p.m. Remember, that p.m. is very important. That's half your answer, so make sure you have it. When I start my number line, I want to begin at the start time. Because Avery got on the bus at 1:10, I know that's my start time. When I take this problem step by step, I see that Avery's trip took 90 minutes. That is my first step. I can break this 90 minutes up into smaller jumps or smaller chunks of time if I can't do that full 90 right off the bat. So I am going to break this up into 60 and 30 minutes. I'm going to jump 60 minutes. I know 60 minutes is an hour. So if I jump 1 hour past 1:10, that would be 2:10. Now because 60 plus 30 is 90, I'm going to jump 30 more minutes. That brings me to 2:40. Now that I've jumped 90 minutes, I want to look at my next step. It says that she walked for 32 minutes to get home. I want to now jump 32 minutes. We could continue to do this on the number line that I have right here, but since I'm running out of room, I'm going to continue my number line down here. I'm putting the same time that we left off with, 2:40. So remember, 2:40 is the time that Avery got off the bus. So now I'm jumping 32 minutes. I'm going to break this up. I'm going to jump 20 minutes because I know 2:40 plus 20 minutes would bring me to a nice time to work with, 3 o'clock. Okay, then I know I need to jump 12 more minutes because 20 plus 12 is 32. 12 more minutes would bring me to 3:12. I know it is 3:12 p.m. because Avery got on the bus at 1:10 p.m. We did not pass midnight. We are still in the afternoon hours, so I know that it is still p.m. And here's our end time, the time that Avery got home, 3:12 p.m. Moving on to number 4. This is a problem-solving problem. It has nothing to do with time. You need to think about all of the things we've talked about so far about our 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And you need to be a problem solver in order to figure this out. This particular problem is tricky. It might take you a lot of guessing and checking in order to figure it out. Remember, if you guess something and if it doesn't work out, don't give up. Keep on going. All right, there is the answer to number 4. Keep on listening if you need some help with that. All right, so when we do this, it's very important that we are a careful reader. This seems kind of like a simple problem. It's kind of short, there's not much to it, but we really need to read carefully in order to help us solve this. So I know that Kyle and Josh have a total of 64 CDs. So when I think about that, that means that if I put both Kyle and Josh's CDs together, I would have a total of 64. So once we understand that, it's all about guessing and checking. I know that if Kyle and Josh had an equal number of CDs, if they both had the same number of CDs, and they put them together and they got 64, they would each have 32 because 32 plus 32 is 64. Now I know that they don't have an equal number because it says right here, Kyle has more CDs than Josh. He has 12 more CDs than Josh. So I know 32 would be the answer if they had the same number. However, that's not it. So I want to guess from there. I know that Kyle's going to have more than 32. Josh is going to have less than 32. So let's go ahead and just guess and check. So if I know it's more than 32, I don't know, let's jump up to 34. Let's say Kyle has 34, and I need to think about what number I could add to 34 to get 64. The answer is 30. I would get 64. However, you'll notice the difference between 34 and 30, it's not 12. It is only 4. So I need to go up higher for Kyle. All right, so I went up higher to 36 because I knew 34 did not give me a difference of 12. It only gave me a difference of 4. So let's go up slowly to 36. Okay, now I'm thinking in my head, 36 plus what is 64? 36 plus 28 is 64. All right, so whenever I look at these two numbers, I need to think, do they have a difference of 12? Well, 36 minus 28, if you needed to write that out, you could, but that is only a difference of 8. So I'm getting closer, but I still don't have a difference of 12 yet. Let's keep going. Next, I don't know, I'll try 38. When I think in my head, what plus 38 gives me 64? 26 plus 38 gives me 64. That. So now I can look at these two numbers, 38, 26. The difference between these two numbers is in fact 12. If you needed to write out that subtraction problem to check, that would have been okay. So here we see 38 would be the number of CDs for Kyle since Kyle has 12 more, and then Josh would have 26. This is all about guessing and checking. You need to stay with it in order to get the right answer. Don't just give up. The answer to number 5 is 30 minutes. Remember, this lesson is all about problem solving, so we're not necessarily always going to do elapsed time. We're not always going to do addition like we just did in the last problem. It's all about looking at the word problem and figuring out what operation you need to use. Here, we needed to divide, or we could have also thought of fractions, our last chapter that we just did. So we know our whole is 60 minutes because that's how much Jamal spent on his computer. The key to this problem is he spent a half hour of the time playing games. Now remember, half. Half means that there are 2 parts. So if I were to break up this whole 60 minutes into 2 parts, that would be 30 and 30. So a half hour is 30 minutes. It says the rest of the time he spent researching. So if we know he spent 30 minutes playing games, we know he spent 60 minutes total. 60 minus the half hour, 30. 60 minus 30 is 30 minutes. So we know he spent 30 minutes researching. We could have divided here, 60 divided by 2. We could have drawn equal groups, 2 equal groups, partition the 60 to get 30, or you could have just remembered from our class conversations that half hour is 30 minutes. Okay, number 6, the answer is 3:45 p.m. Remember that p.m. is equally as important as that 3:45. This was very similar to the math on the spot video, I believe. So if you did not get 3:45, think back to that problem. Let's go ahead and take a closer look to see how we got 3:45. I know that this problem is an elapsed time problem. I know that the end time is 4:35, and I need to work backwards. I need to subtract 30 minutes, and then I need to subtract 20 minutes, and then I will arrive at the time that Caleb got home. So on my number line, which is the strategy I am choosing to use, I want to start at my end time of 4:35 p.m. Now, I'm going to subtract 30 minutes because according to my problem, that is how long he studied for his test. So when I subtract 30 minutes, that brings me to 4:05. If that was too big of a jump for you, you could have broken that up into smaller jumps, whatever works best for you, as long as you get a total of 30 minutes backwards to get 4:05. From there, we need to subtract the amount of time he worked on his science project, which was 20 minutes. So I think I need to break this one up because I'm at 4:05 right now. Jumping back 20, I think, is kind of difficult. So I'm going to break this up into 5 minutes and then 15 minutes. So if I jump back 5 minutes, that brings me to 4 o'clock. And then I'm going to jump back my final 15 minutes, which brings me to 3:45. Remember, we're subtracting. If you needed to pull up your clock either on your iPad or one of the yellow Judy clocks that we have in the room, if you needed to go and get one of those things to help you figure out what 4 o'clock minus 15 minutes is, you could have done that. So there, my friends, is the answer, 3:45. And again, we need to add that PM. We did not go past midnight there, so we are still working with times with PM. Number 7 was a problem where time was not involved. You needed to think really deep about which operation would get you the answer here. So take a minute, pause the video. If you're not understanding where that came from, then keep on listening. The first thing I did when solving this problem is I made a little chart for each day of the week. If I read carefully, I know that on Monday, Miguel scored 83 points. So it says that his score went up 5 points each day. So that means I need to add. I need to add on from 83. And I'm going to stop whenever I get to 103. So when I add 5 to 83, that brings me to 88. Plus 5 more is 93. Plus 5 more is 98. Plus 5 more is 103. And I'm going to stop right there. I actually didn't have to use this Saturday box that I left for myself because we can see that Miguel scored 103 points on Friday. So here's our answer, Friday. And then when you're explaining that, here's what we did. We added 5 until we got a sum of 103. Since we added 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, I counted 4 days after Monday. So 4 days after Monday is Friday. Here is the answer to number 8. If you got that first time, 3:20 p.m., you may look up on the board for your next activity. Now let's take a closer look at how we got 3:20 p.m. The first thing you should have realized after reading this problem is we know the end time here. We know that Laura left the library. That word left is a clue that this is your end time. She left at 4:15. We want to know what time she arrived. Since we know the end time is 4:15, I'm going to set up my number line to show that. The end is 4:15. Now I can jump backwards 15 and jump backwards 40, and when I do that, we should arrive at the time Laura got to the library. So let's begin. 4:15, if I'm going backwards 15 minutes, that is 4 o'clock. You could have used a clock if you couldn't do that in your head. Now from here, this is tricky. We're at 4 o'clock. We want to jump back the 40 minutes that she spent reading her book. So this is tricky because we're at 4 o'clock and we're going backwards. So remember, if we're going backwards, we're at the previous hour, which is 3. And I forgot my time up here. I'm going to jump 10 minutes. To make sure I get into the 3 o'clock hour correctly. So if I jump back 10 minutes, I'm at 3:50. Now remember, I'm jumping a total of 40. I've only jumped 10, so now I can jump 30 more. I feel comfortable doing that. If you do not, you could have broken that up into smaller jumps. So 30 minutes would bring us to 320. And there is our answer. Awesome job today. This was not an easy lesson. You may look up on the board for your next activity.